to die in there. Don't say I didn't warn you.
All right, greetings, ladies and gentlemen, sick ghouls all over the world. My name is Renegade Operative, and we are doing an IAS special podcast. This podcast is talking about bad horror movies. It's been a long time coming, but we're gonna give our thoughts and responses on an assortment of questions that we have here, all related to the terrible, the awful. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. It's all about bad horror film, and I cannot wait to discuss and talk about this. As always, I'm the host, Renegade Operative, and I will move to some of my panelists and co-hosts. First, we have Vela.
Glad to be here. It's been a really long time since I've been able to be on one of these podcasts, so thrilled to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem, no problem. I think the last one was like the Nightmare podcast, or Jason. I know it's been like a really long time, but it's always good to have you.
Yeah.
Next, we have Slash. Introduce yourself, good sir.
Hello. As you can tell by my name, I'm a big horror fan, so I'm really excited to talk about this. It's been a while since I've been on a podcast myself. I think the Silent Hill 2 podcast was the last one I was on, which was really fun.
It was fun, and it was 4 hours long digesting that game.
4 hours long.
Jeez.
We are gonna try not to make this one 4 hours long.
No,
So.
I think it might be 2 and some change, or maybe 1 hour and 50 minutes. We'll see. But last but not least, we have Kellyan. Introduce yourself, good sir.
Hi everybody, thanks for having me. I'm a horror nut. That's the best way I can put it. In honor of this podcast, I actually watched a few bad horror movies this weekend to get an idea of ups and downs of just terribly rated horror movies.
I hate reminiscing on half of these films, but I guess we'll get to it immediately. So let's start off with the first question, which is a very simple one. What are the general building blocks, in your opinion, that makes for a bad horror movie? Like, what is the easiest thing that someone could mess up, in your opinion? And I will go first with Vela.
Well, I feel like the things that are easiest to mess up are the non-horror specific elements. Things that can be easily missed in a comedy movie, an action movie, a thriller, etc. You know, just like your plot, the cinematography, characters and character development. You know, you have some horror movies, like, for example, sometimes Final Destination or like the Wrong Turn sequels, where I feel like when it comes to horror in particular, the ones that end up being bad, we're beyond like the obvious of like incompetent directors or writers, etc., or where the focus is solely on the kills, the gore, which is fun. You know, we all like that kind of thing. It's always really entertaining, and it's nice to see good practical effects. But I feel like a lot of the time when they're bad is when like they really focus on those particular elements, and then the ones like I mentioned, like plot, cinematography, etc., kind of fall to the wayside.
Slash, it is your turn. What do you think of this question? What is the worst thing and the easiest thing they could mess up for the building blocks for a horror film?
Well, I think for horror, one of the biggest things that you really need to focus on is if you are providing horror. I feel like people tend to prioritize a lot of plot and all that stuff, and they will classify their movies as horror movies, but they just aren't scary. This is a sentiment I've always had with horror games as well. If you're not really scary, you might be a good movie, but are you going to be a good horror movie? Now, of course, like, plot and characters always have their basis in the genre, as we have been getting better and better horror movies as we keep going through the years with more elevated horror. But I feel like there is a stigma in the genre that plot and characters equal good. No plot and character equals bad. I want a case in point, the Terrifier series. Terrifier is primarily a very gory splatterhouse film, but it's not. But people say it's bad not because it's a gore splatterhouse movie, but because it is not the most deep in terms of plot. Horror doesn't need to be based around a plot, people. Understand that. But the easiest thing to really mess up for me personally is your type of scare, because a lot of these more recent directors, the Conjuring universe, I want to just say that outright. Like we're gonna name names here for me. Uh, they're so focused on getting the cheapest possible scare out of people, so it's just not leaving as much of an effect. Um, but yeah, I think that's really all I gotta say on it.
Kellen, it is your turn. What is the building blocks that they could potentially get incorrect for you for a horror film or make it terrible?
For me, it's more in the director side, where the director, they could be an amazing director, but when they come right out and give you every piece of like mystery that a horror movie should have right at the start, where you don't have the build up, especially in some of the newer psychological horrors, where you kind of know the whole story right off the bat. And to echo Vela and Slash, cinematography is a big thing for me, working as well as script, because I work as an editor. If the script is terrible, give us something more than just slaughterhouse movie. Make it actually scary. I know horror is subjective for different people, but I'm seeing a lot, especially in the early 2000 or early 2020s. We're getting a lot of rapid fire kind of BC movies where they just give you everything up front. Easiest way to ruin your movie: tell people like, oh hey, this is the killer right now, this is their whole MO. Like Cherry Falls, a movie that did that right off the bat. It's like, oh, this person's killing virgins because they're an escaped patient who did it 20 years ago. Kind of takes away from the horror aspect when you know everything up front.
I will go next on this question then. So my answer written is kind of different, so I guess I'll combo them in because I just thought about this on the fly. One thing that kind of bothers me, and I notice this instantly, is when a director or whatever tries to rely too much on tropes and figures that will get him through making a good horror movie, and it turns out to be shit. They don't really think it through. Like some people, you can clearly tell they're following all the beats word for word, beat for beat from everything from the past, and they're not executing it properly or adding unique things. Not saying that there aren't directors that don't do that or add original twist to it, but the ones who don't, you can clearly tell it's like, can I copy your homework, please? Let me make this horror movie, let me just do this, and it doesn't turn out well. Another thing that I don't like, and I think we all said this, is obviously when someone makes bad scripts and bad cinematography and the movie is just god awful, honestly, to watch, to engage with. I think my friend said it best when he said, you know, horror movies that are bad that you can have a laugh at, that's like so bad is good, that's like comedy gold in my opinion. But the worst thing about a bad horror movie is when it's boring and it has like nothing going for it whatsoever, and the director just clearly does not care at all. I think that is the worst offense that someone could do for a terrible horror movie. And the last thing is, I really think that we are entering this era of people also, you know, doing horror remakes and just not paying attention to the source material whatsoever. I believe there was one interview, and I know it's the Resident Evil movies, but I think Paul Anderson said I only played RE4 and that was it. And I just thought to myself, oh my God, what are you doing? Like, it's just no. If you're going to adapt something, please, for the love of God, try to understand everything that came before, as opposed to one thing you probably saw and seen it and said, okay, that's done. That's the mecca of the series. I don't like that whatsoever when a filmmaker says that, because usually I think the movie is going to be a recipe for disaster. And that is my opinion on question number one. So question number two is, name 5 extremely terrible horror films in terms of bad quality and cite the reasoning in your opinion. If you can't think of 5, then name as many as you can, and I will go with Kellen first.
The first, like I said, I've watched a lot of bad horror movies recently. The first is the new Popeye movie. It's so good, it's bad. They had great cinematography, but the acting at times and the direction felt like you're watching on 2 different levels. Like, you had amazing actors and you had actors who you could tell were phoning it in, and it just was so disjointed. It did not make a lot of sense. And most of these, 'cause I watched a bunch of the public domain movies. The Mickey Mouse movie that came out, Mousetrap, had the exact same issues as the Popeye movie did. You had great cinematography at times. At other times, it just was god awful. Like the movie I mentioned that had bad missteps, Cherry Falls. Great director attached, a great special effects team, terrible script. They really needed to spend a bit of time reworking that. I'm trying to think of the other ones I've watched recently. I binged a bunch. A movie called The Night. It's a Korean film. Great plot to it. Basically, people are stuck in a room. They had to survive the night in their hostel, I think it was. Should have been a great isolationist movie. Lighting was bad. Script was terrible. The cinematography was terrible. A few times during the movie, you could see the boom mic come down into the frame. I was like, why?
Like Black Dynamite, but not done intentionally.
Yeah. And an old one, the original Night of the Mummy, had a good premise. An older movie had a good premise to it. You know, your Curse of the Mummy, you'd think it would be a basic formula movie, except rather than having the formula to make it successful, they tried shoving a bunch of stuff into the movie that it lost all cohesion. It was, and I enjoy the old Hammer movies, but this was one I think they could have done a better job and not have wasted 90 minutes of screen time on. So those are my 5 bad movies I've recently watched.
Well, by the listing, I guess it's my turn, so I'll try to keep this quick. A lot of movies from this man I don't like, and I'll rant about him later. I'm pretty sure he's probably gonna be on my worst director list. But Uwe House of the Dead. I just remember watching this and going, again, like, why are they doing the 360 camera thing and it's just so fucking disorienting, and they decide to put in snippets from the game and it doesn't work, and it's not anything fearful for the characters. There's like no tension whatsoever. Everything is just like extremely stupid and it doesn't make sense, and I just remember thoroughly hating this movie when I saw it, and just laughing at the final zombie having chalk all over his face. I thought that was funny as fuck, in my opinion. But another one I didn't like, and I guess some of these tropes, it's only one film that did this, and I thought it was comedy gold, but the rest were fucking awful. You know, when they teleport the said slasher into space, you know they've ran out of ideas, and this is Leprechaun, I think it's 4, Leprechaun in Space, whichever one it was. I remember this movie just looked so cheaply made. Everything was just on this like white set, and I'm just like, they didn't put any production value at all into how it looked, and I was just like, why is a leprechaun here? It doesn't make any fucking sense. It's just, I don't understand why they decided to even remotely greenlight this in the first place. Another Leprechaun movie, Leprechaun in the Hood. So, you know, they definitely ran out of ideas when we got to this point. I know this movie is so bad it's good, but it's still bad. Me and my friends were watching it in the server, the horror server that we have, and oh my god, dude, the moment where I saw Ice-T, I believe it was Ice-T, he looked like a 70s blaxploitation character, and he pulled a giant baseball bat out of his afro and tried to attack the leprechaun. When I saw that, I literally almost died. I almost went comatose. I'm just like, you can't be serious with this movie. Like, there's no way, dude. But it's terrible. It's not high bar or anything like that. It's just, let's just put this guy in the worst place ever and let him run amok with his leprechaun hose. I remember they had that too as well in the movie. I was just like, what is going on? I have no idea. But it left me in a stupor, and I guess it was funny, so there was some value to be had, but it's not good. Next is Jason Goes to Hell. This is probably, I don't like this movie at all. I remember doing my Friday watches for the podcast, and once I got to this one, it was pretty bad. I know part 5 and Takes Manhattan would come up in the ranks for sure, but this is the one that I just thought was like super boring. And you don't see, this is the infamous movie where it's like, oh, Jason is body hopping, so it's not like the Jason that you are used to, because they blew him up and now he eats hearts to survive in other bodies. And I'm like, they just overcomplicated the lore like so fucking much. I don't understand it. And the whole family aspect was dumb. Like, oh, now Jason's like relatives, they have this super powered omega dagger that is needed to stab him in the heart, and only she can do it or something like that. And I'm just thinking, what is this movie? We have jumped the shark. We have gone into territories that literally don't even make sense to the lore of like Friday whatsoever. It was so simple and they overcomplicated it. I just hated that movie so much. The gore was fine, but just the premise itself was so stupid. So I remember that. And Halloween, yes, Halloween 2 by Rob Zombie, the man who does not understand Halloween, in my opinion. I am not the biggest fan of this series. I'm pretty sure I've gone on record in saying this, that the whole hillbilly aspect they tried to shoehorn in this movie, and even the first one was, I did not like it, where it's like, oh, we're gonna make it overt. Here's this abusive family to Michael or whatever, and here's all these abusive inmates and all this other stuff going on. I just remember I thought to myself, I think the nuance is like shot in the head with a shotgun at this rate, and I just don't think it's Halloween to me. It doesn't scream Halloween. I probably will go back and watch the first movie in the server and maybe the second, but I just remember seeing that one point in time and going, the only thing I like about this movie is like Michael is a behemoth, and that's it. I don't like anything else. These characters, I remember not really digging the new Laurie Strode. I just just did not like much of the movie. So that is my top 5 picks. Next I will go with Slash. What are yours?
Okay. So you kind of took my Halloween 2. I was gonna talk about Halloween 2 because Michael Myers is my personal favorite slasher. Um, I've loved him to death for as long as I've been a horror fan, which has been most of my life. Um, but Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, I felt like, in fact, no, let's just put in the entirety of Rob Zombie's Halloween duology, and put it in my top 5 because it is a fundamental mischaracterization of Michael Myers as a character. I, I feel like giving the most sadistic killer known to man and the one who has always been said there is no reason he is just evil. I feel like giving him a tragic backstory where he is almost a victim is the most asinine mishandling of a character since just ever actually. I can't think of anyone else who's been done dirtier than Michael Myers was in the Rob Zombie Halloween movies. And people may say, oh, but Michael was done pretty dirty in Halloween Ends. At least Michael was still evil in that one. Ooh, I was going to say another one, and I lost my train of thought while I was listening to Ren speak. Oh, I bet no one ever expected this to come up in this podcast. The number one, I will skip right to my number one. Those are 5 and 4. They're pretty bad, but I cannot forgive this number one. Jeepers Creepers Reborn. I don't think I have to say anything else on that one. And it's like, I get it. They were trying to get away from the previous director, who we will not name because we don't want his name attached to this podcast at all. But unfortunately, it comes with the sentiment of naming this franchise. But getting it away from the director was what I thought going to be a good idea. Get it in the hands of someone new who could potentially make a good movie out of this. And that happened. I felt like I was losing my brain cells watching that movie because everything is green screened. Everything. The giant crucifix at the top of the church is green screened. The fucking cop cars are green screened on. They're not even there. They're green screened. And it's like, oh, God. It's one of the most cheap looking movies, and it's in a franchise, a well established franchise, and it looks that cheap. At least with movies like the really bad Pooniverse is what they're calling it. At least those are not established for. At least it's not an established franchise yet, or at least I hope it won't be. I can at least forgive like shitty effects in those kinds of movies, but in a franchise that has been established for about 20 years, and you do that. Uh, Cody Leach said it best. You can nail that fucking coffin shut. Um, and I think I might have a hot take on this one, but I think the original Friday the 13th movie is the worst in the series. That might be a bit of a hot take, but that's what I believe, because at least with Jason Goes to Hell or Jason X or Friday Part 5 or Friday Part 8 or however many Fridays there are at this point, you could at least enjoy Jason being Jason. But the first movie, as much nuance as it has, it's a very boring rewatch. And one of my personal pet peeves with a horror movie is if it is boring. That to me is far worse than a bad movie, because I can at least watch a bad movie and laugh at how bad it is, especially with the later Friday sequels. But the first Friday the 13th, I'm sure in 1980 it was the scariest thing ever. But nowadays, knowing what the Friday series became, it's like, just keep this in mind. There is a reason Friday the 13th is not known for Pamela Voorhees among the general public. There is a reason, and the first movie is that reason. My final pick, my final and fifth movie, it's a rough one because I've named all the ones that personally give me pet peeves. But I think I'm going to give it to Silent Hill Revelation. Now, I had watched the Silent Hill movies after I had played the 30 minutes of Silent Hill 2 as a child and fear quit forever. I watched them, and in Revelation, I had no idea about what Silent Hill really was to its extent, but I at least knew it wasn't this. I later would find out that, Silent Hill Revelation is an adaptation of Silent Hill 3 with Sean Bean, of all people, playing Harry. And I'm just like, what? And the inclusion of Pyramid Head, it was a fundamental misunderstanding of a franchise. Hollywood taking a franchise known for its lack of subtlety, but also depth and nuance, and just completely stripping it away in favor of, well, it looks cool, so do it. And it's infuriating to fans, general audiences, and critics. And I think that's really all the 5 movies I can list. I could list 20, but we just don't have the time. And I've already gone long enough.
Vela, how about you? What is your top 5 worst horror movies of all time?
Oh man. Firstly, I want to say that I considered putting Silent Hill Revelation in my 5. That's a great pick. But there's not enough that I actually remember about it, enough to include it to where I'd want to talk about it and really could talk about it in depth. And God knows I wasn't going to go back and watch that monstrosity for even a second. So I just went with other ones. I wanted to avoid remakes for this because that just felt too easy. Like low hanging fruit. Because I'm pretty sure all of us could probably have a top 5 just of like really unspeakably bad remakes, like maybe The Haunting or the Steve Miner '09 Day of the Dead one always sticks out in my mind, Wicker Man, etc. But going into mine, the first one I picked was one that kind of pops up on social media every now and then. It's been a while since the last time it kind of went viral. So we probably are due for that to happen again. I hope not, but it probably will happen. Is Megan is Missing. Just an extremely poor found footage indie movie. And I normally don't like shitting on movies that really seem to be low budget indie movies because they're not working with a lot, but it really is just so. Firstly, it takes itself way too seriously. The director really, and again, I don't want to like shit on Michael Goy. I don't know, I'm sure he's a nice guy, but he seems to really think that the movie has a much deeper, profound kind of nature to it than what is actually there, and that's kind of a strike already. And then you get into just every kind of aspect, the cinematography, the acting, it's just every part of it is horrible. And it's made worse by the reputation and the fact that, sometimes kids online see it and really perceive it to be like a profound kind of movie or very disturbing. And I guess it's subjective, to each their own, but I guess some almost think it's real when they see it, even though the acting is absolutely abysmal. But my second one was, and I'm not sure. Well, you guys may have heard of it because I know I talked about it here in the server. I believe I said that it made Uwe Boll's House of the Dead look like a masterpiece. I think I said it made it look like The Godfather. and that is a very obscure 2020 zombie movie called Strain 100. If you haven't heard of this, I don't blame you. It has a whopping 286 total views on Letterboxd. So very, very obscure. I brief tangent. I sometimes really crave just terrible zombie movies. Um, Unlike Helen and some others, I usually don't like watching movies that I feel like are going to be bad. To me, it's kind of a time investment. I want to watch something that I feel like I'm really going to enjoy. But sometimes the zombie movies, man, I'm like, I don't want to watch like Dawn of the Dead. I want to watch something good. I just want some pure, unadulterated garbage. And Strain 100, I was not prepared for just how bad that would be. Other ones, like other bad horror movies that we talk about, that we've all listed, right? We can only say those are very trivial. They're very inoffensive. You kind of watch it. It's like 80, 90 minutes go by. You kind of wish you had your time back, and then you kind of just forget about it and you move on with your life. This movie is one that tries to take a political message of being anti-vax, and so it's not one that I can say is completely inoffensive. And so that's the first kind of strike. Like in the movie, the zombie outbreak is started because of basically COVID vaccine. It's like exploitation kind of made in 2020, obviously during the initial COVID outbreak. And then of course beyond that, it's all the trappings that you would expect. Just completely terrible acting, poor cinematography. Like just the look and exposure of the movie is absolutely abhorrent. And there's a part that sticks out in my mind where it's just the part where, a zombie actor is shot by a shotgun, and in typical movie fashion, they go flying backward. And they had like this kind of black pad for the stunt actor to lay on, and it's in the shot when they fall back. And I had to rewind it like 4 times. I couldn't believe that was actually in the shot. But yeah, completely abysmal. In general, this was actually a bit harder than I anticipated, because for a lot of bad movies, you're kind of just like, yeah, it sucks. Next. I felt it was kind of difficult to pick ones that would actually be kind of interesting to talk about. Um, but my third official pick was Paranormal Activity: Next of Kin, the only one that I did like a full breakdown on, because I feel like it's a really good tour de force and how not to do found footage. They just have shots that are thrown in that are very obviously not recorded by who is supposed to be a character in the movie, kind of breaking the fundamental rules of found footage, and not in like a creative, artistic, spearheading some bold new direction kind of way, but like in a way where they wanted a shot, but they were too lazy to figure out how to incorporate it into the plot and how a character would be filming it. So they just filmed it anyway and said, fuck it, and threw it in. Yeah, same thing. It's absolutely dog water. And the creature design toward the end in the third act is so laughable and so terrible. And then they rip off the ending of Texas Chainsaw just to make it worse. But yeah, I like that. I complained about it so much, and then I think Ren, I believe you tagged me in it in the chat here about how Jason Blum even himself came out and said, "Yeah, this movie fucking sucks."
Yeah, he did.
That's why I'm comfortable picking it, because it's like some that I'm sure people won't really try to defend. But the next one's a sequel, The Descent Part 2, which is on here because firstly, I think it's worse than a lot of people have it. Not that a lot of people really like it, but I think it's just one of those movies that has more of like a middling kind of reputation of being an underwhelming sequel to a truly outstanding horror movie. And it just gets everything wrong. The very, very well constructed, tight paced horror and claustrophobia of the first one, combined with the very detailed set design and use and direction with the set, the lighting, just everything that really made the first one feel real, feel claustrophobic, and just like a truly oppressive experience to watch is completely missing from this. You just have glaring light sources coming in, like everything's overexposed. It just completely takes you out of the movie. The decision to go with it ended up being the official ending in the US, where Sarah escapes. But choosing to just go on from that, like inherently, it was just a bad idea. That's what I'm getting at. It was a bad idea to make it. and like bringing Juno back and just trying to go on that sort of false ending of the first one. Because for those who don't know, the official ending of The Descent, they all die. Like there is no the scene where Sarah escapes the cave, gets into the truck, and then sees like Juno's ghost, and then it jump scares. That was all hallucination. Then it cuts back to her at a dead end in the cave. So I really love the actual ending, and I hate that they, pardon my, I guess my language with this, but that they really pussified the ending by trying to leave it with Sarah getting out. But yeah, The Descent Part Two, terrible. And then the last one that may be a bit of a surprise as well is one by John Eric Dowdle, who, same thing, like, I don't know, he was a nice guy, but I'm just not a fan of his catalog. I am not a fan of any movie that he's made personally. And I went with the Poughkeepsie tapes. It's one that I sat down to watch quite a while back, and I ended up actually tapping out after a pretty good degree. Another one where I do not really care for the sort of mockumentary police interview kind of setup. It feels like one where either admittedly, I'm not sure if he was the writer on it as well, but whoever wrote it seems to be just way too impressed with themselves for the villain that they created, who was not in any way engaging, interesting, just a buffoon in a dumb, cheap costume, just shouting at would be victims in his cellar or whatever the fuck. They seem to be way too impressed with themselves because they have the dialogue with like all the cops and this kind of mockumentary format on camera, kind of saying shit like, "Oh, he was just like so smart, we could never catch him." Like they don't praise psychopathic killers in real life. They don't do that. Like they wouldn't. None of these characters would be saying this. I don't buy it. And then very very basic direction is messed up to where you have shots of these characters being interviewed for this documentary format, and then it'll cut to a different scene, then go back to it, and then it's at a slightly different angle, or maybe it's like at a Dutch angle for now for no reason. To where I'm just watching it, I'm like, brother, all you had to do was just set the camera up and just let the actor go through their lines, and it would have been like, how did you mess that up? But yeah, truly, just one that I feel is very abhorrent, and one that also has kind of middling reception as well, but that I think is a lot worse than where a lot of people have pegged. But those are my five.
All right, so we're moving on to question number 3. Name 3 awful kills that you've seen in a horror movie. It could be either a good one or a bad one. The reasoning could be the special effects, the story, etc. Just name 3. Kellen, I want you to go first.
So the first one that I could think of off the top of my head, Maximum Overdrive. You know, the 70s classic horror movie. A dude gets killed by a tire that was chasing him. He could have just gone inside any building around him and gotten away from the tire. Instead, he just ran straight down the street. I get it was supposed to be kind of a shocking thing, but it was just really, really stupid to me. Even years later, watching, like, that's just dumb. My second is actually from a horror comedy called Bloodsucking Bastards. For absolutely no reason, no story reason behind it. They just pop a guy's head like a grape. No, no story. I mean, the effects were great, but it's just like, what? How does that continue the story at all? It was just kind of there. I don't think the directors knew what they wanted to do with a character, and were like, okay, this guy can't make it to taping the rest of the movie. Let's just kill him off. And the third is an iconic movie. We all know the Hellraiser series. We've all probably seen them all multiple times. In I forget which Hellraiser movie it was. I think it was Hell on Earth, where they were at a rave where they were playing a computer game. A dude gets killed because of the computer game that somehow the Cenobites sent to Earth. It made absolutely zero sense. that whole movie made zero sense, but that kill, he gets sucked into the monitor. Like that throws away all of the Cenobites, you know, idea that pain is pleasure. No, dude just gets sucked into a monitor and okay, he's dead now. And you never revisit it in that movie ever again. Like that was just a terrible decision on the directors, on the writers, the actor for terrible acting, and it did nothing. It just was a one-off scene and then never gets brought up. Those are my three worst for mostly direction in the movies.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. I'm gonna change a kill because I thought of this one on the fly, and I figured for this movie having many great kills, this was one of the super terrible ones. So Bride of Chucky, whoever the guy was that was, he found out that the daughter and the guy were like supposedly killers. They found the body in the back, and they thought that they killed them, but it was Chucky and Tiffany, and then they pulled a gun on them. You know where I'm going with this if you've seen this scene. It's basically he steps in front of the highway and the truck hits him, but it is the most cheap looking effect I think I ever seen in my life when he gets slammed by the truck. He does a pose too, which makes it stupider. It's like you think of good kills with automobiles like Final Destination where the girl gets hit by the fucking bus and it's like brilliant out of nowhere. It's like very shocking. Whereas this is like, let me strike a Mickey Mouse pose and then get hit in the worst green screen possible and have like the fakest looking blood possible. So I would say that's a terrible death that I've seen in horror movies. The next one is another one involving vehicular death. This is the Final Destination where they have the race car rink and the guy sees the premonition of it crashing and the engine block like falls on someone's chest and it looks like the fakest piece of shit I think I ever seen. It's like, what is sitting on his chest? It's not real. It's just foam. What in the fuck is going, like, in the wheels killing people that it's like they didn't even try. You compare this scene to Final Destination 2, it's like night and day. It is some of the worst special effects I think I ever seen in horror movie kill history, and just I didn't buy it for a second. And the last one is the meme, the one that many people will know. It is Halloween Kills. It is the one, yes, it is the one where Michael kicks the door and the woman is shooting a Desert Eagle and he kicks it near her and she basically, takes her own life because she won't stop shooting. She has no trigger discipline whatsoever. When I saw this the first time, I didn't even know what happened. I was like, wait, what? How? What? I was like, oh, I don't understand. My brain is not processing the amount of kilograms to process this. Like, what the fuck is going on? But then they told me that, oh, she shot herself in the head. I was like, oh, well, why didn't she stop shooting like when she was close? Or why didn't she go to the back of the vehicle and start blowing Michael's brains out? It makes no sense. But hey, you need dumb characters in dumb horror movies, and I guess that was the situation. It was just something I was not expecting because it was 10 times as dumb as I could imagine it when I was trying to process this kill, and I still can't after all these years of seeing it. So it ranks in my list. I'm putting it there, and that is my 3. I had an honorable mention, the guy getting sucked into the sink on the Blob. I forget which one it was, but I just know that it didn't look right going back to it. I know it's an old movie, but I was just like, you can clearly tell it's like a little, wax guy getting sucked into the sink, and I just thought that looked very corny. So I would go with all of those, and those are my picks. Next up is Slash. What is top 3 worst horror movie deaths you've seen of all time?
Well, this will be interesting. Um, I'm a big gore hound in movies, so I'm relatively like I really like kills in a horror movie. It's one of the best things for me. It's why Terrifier and Saw are two of my favorite franchises that are still going right now. But in terms of kills, it's just like we've seen some really dreadful ones, and then we've seen some really good ones. Um, ooh, Lord Almighty. Um, I guess I should start with one of my least favorite kills, and it is, unfortunately, we're going back to Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, the death of Michael Myers. Both of them, in fact, because if the audience doesn't know, there are two versions of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. There is the theatrical version and the director's cut. The only difference between those two being one's a Rob Zombie music video, the other is a much more unbearable Rob Zombie music video. And both deaths of Michael Myers are the worst deaths of a horror movie villain I think I've ever seen. Because in the theatrical version, he is shot by Sheriff Brackett, played by the legendary Brad Dourif, and he falls onto rebar on some farming equipment. What? Farming equipment. Uh, First off, why is there rebar on farming equipment? Second off, how does that shot knock Michael back? A character in that same movie and series of movies had been shown to shrug off gunshots like it is nothing. And then Laurie just stabs him a couple times and it's over. The second one is even worse because Michael's just shot by a barrage of police officers, which we know doesn't work because they did that to him 20 years before that in Halloween 4. So it's very clear Rob Zombie, like I said, he doesn't understand Michael Myers. The another death that I do want to talk about is from one of the Saw movies. In fact, no, let me just say this outright. Let me just get this outright. All of Saw 5's deaths are bad. I'm just going to say that outright. They don't make any narrative sense. They're out of the blue. They're so goddamn convoluted. I don't know how the directors or writers didn't have their head shoved so far up their ass that they could smell their own colon thinking that this was genius writing. Because on what planet are these characters this stupid enough? Like the tunnel, like the jar, the bombs, the bomb trap is one of the dumbest traps in the franchise. Because they clearly see there's enough room to hold more than one person in those tunnels, but they're just too stupid to understand, and it doesn't. And Detective Strom is the worst one because it's like, again, it's another example of the writers thinking that they're so smart, but like it's like this makes no sense. Why would he not do that? He knows that Hoffman is like right on his ass and he will kill him. There's clearly no danger in that box. Why did you not go in the box? Like, it's the most obvious trap I've ever seen. And it makes no sense. And for my final one, that pisses me off to this day, Ren, may I ask you a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Is Resident Evil, the final chapter, classified as a horror movie?
Oh my god, I know what you're gonna say, but go right ahead.
fucking Wesker. A door. A door kills the big bad of the Resident Evil franchise. The same guy who eats bullets for breakfast, catches rocket launchers like they're nothing, and has the powers of near teleportation. He is moving so fast. Dies to a door. Need I say more? Whoever's next, I can't speak anymore because I will start screaming. I'm already fucking livid. So I'm gonna cut off. Thanks.
I think that scene in general of him getting the elevator door slammed on his knee and screaming "help me," even though he has superhuman powers, so fucking stupid. Oh my god, I wish I would have mentioned that, but it did not cross my head whatsoever. God damn it, I hate it. Well, next up is Vela. What are your top 3 terrible horror movie deaths of all time?
Yeah, we'll move away from that Wesker death. We'll let Slash go take a breather, go take a walk and cool down a little bit. But I have a bit of a cheeky answer to start with, and that's going to be all the kills in AVP Requiem because you can't fucking see any of them. For a real answer, I had Traeger from The Predator, played by Sterling K. Brown, because he's at least supposed to be kind of a major character, and it's kind of like an example that Callan brought up, where it's just out of nowhere, just a head blow up completely out of nowhere. That's my only actual answer. This is one where just none really came to mind. But my last one, another one that's a bit cheeky, but all the kills in The Thing 2011, because it is absolute sacrilege to take arguably the greatest horror movie of all time, one that is especially known for its incredible, groundbreaking practical effects, and then just douse everything in pretty bad CGI. So I'm choosing that one on principle alone. Well, also because, the CGI is not great, so the kills are pretty bad. But yeah, mainly on principle. That's all I really got for that one.
All right, so we're moving on to question number 4. What is the worst twist that you ever seen in a horror movie that was so poorly done that you want to mention it? It could be from a good movie or a bad movie, so I guess you could open the floodgates there. And I will start first with Kellen.
Wait, this is going to be... It's a good movie overall. Gonna put that out there. I enjoyed the franchise, except as Slash said, the 5th movie in this franchise was just fucking terrible. Saw 3. When you find out that the guy being tested is the doctor's husband. That was such lazy writing. You would think they could have made it anything else. But oh no, it's your husband that has been going through the trials while you have a shotgun bomb collar around your neck. And I love the Saw franchise, but that twist just felt like they were sitting around after going through a bunch of edits and just were like, we need to do some kind of shock twist to throw off the scent. We'll make it her husband. That works. I hate that twist so much. It was poor execution and lazy writing to me.
Well, I guess it's my turn. I have 2, but it's kind of hard. I kind of interchange these 2. They're both terrible. One is from a good movie, one is from a bad movie. I didn't like the whole Roy thing in Jason Part 5. I remember, just like everyone else, I know that's easy, low-hanging fruit, but since it was telegraphed a mile away that, oh, it's not Jason, it's him, it just kind of irked me. I'm like, you could have probably did anything else and made it more pertinent, but you decided to throw it in front of our faces with his facial expressions and everything, especially to the boy that was down. That's the first indicator that I saw. And I was like, yeah, this guy is he's probably the killer. And the fact that it's a fake Jason is lame, to be honest. But this one is from a good movie that I want to mention, and it's from Scream 6, and I'm pretty sure people are gonna know what I'm gonna say. The killers for that movie is the most predictable and lazy I think the Ghostface reveal has ever been. Ever. Within the whole series, ever. Even Roman was better than this. Like, I'm gonna throw that one out there, and I don't like Roman Bridger. I thought it was also super weak, but to say, oh, it's just Richie's like family from the next movie, I'm just like, come on, man, you guys could have like done something way better than this. Like, and the whole revenge angle again, we've experienced that in the series with Scream 2 and Mrs. Loomis. Just it wasn't anything amazing, and it was a pretty boring reveal, and the fact that they had to pull out a lot of clown shoes in order to say, oh well, maybe one of them is dead, with the whole daughter thing, or whatever, and then you realize that I don't know, like, this cop is staying behind the scenes, and you're not seeing the body of the daughter after the fact, and I just thought that was weird, so I automatically caught on in like 5 minutes. A Ghostface reveal this good should not be super predictable, and that one was, to me, in my opinion, so I really didn't like it. I love the rest of the movie, but it's like one of my followers said, his name is Neo GameSpark, I really enjoyed this movie a lot, but when they revealed those Ghostface killers, I was just like, no. It's just like, and I agree with him too. When I got to that point, I didn't think that part was good. But that's the worst twist in my opinion. I will pass the baton over to Slash.
Okay. You know what? Twists in horror movies are good, but only when they make narrative sense. For example, Saw. Saw usually has a good example for a narrative twist. Now, I believe that Kalen has already said Saw 5. I don't remember. I was kind of cooling down a little. But in all honesty, no, he said Saw 3. He said Saw 3, actually. But I am going to go into the Saw franchise, but I'm not going to say Saw 5. I'm going to say Saw the Final Chapter. Saw the Final Chapter. This is when fan service goes wrong. Dr. Gordon. He's a doctor. A little dead meat reference for you there.
I got that one.
Good, I'm glad.
Lawrence Gordon, I'm a doctor.
But Dr. Gordon had essentially been like theorized for years upon years to be the secret apprentice of Jigsaw that we never saw. And lo and behold, the behind the scenes information that we got in the later years would imply as much, as he was going to make an appearance in Saw 3, which many people believe was going to build up to his reveal in a later movie as the apprentice. You know, the hints were always there. The Venus flytrap videotape has a character limping. Right after Saw 1 ended with someone cutting their leg off, so it was pretty obvious who to really theorize about. But I feel like Saw 7 essentially going to the end of the movie saying, oh no, he's not really the apprentice. No, don't believe all that. Don't believe that. Just kidding. He's an apprentice. And it's like, we knew this. He's talking evil. Like, he's got the evil tone in his voice. Cary Elwes is not the most subtle man in the Saw franchise. But again, it's the problem with Saw 5, where the writers think they're smarter than they really think they are. You know, some people may say, but what about Jigsaw? Jigsaw breaks the lore, where an apprentice is claiming to be an apprentice after Jigsaw had died. Because keep in mind, Jigsaw takes place in 2016, a whole 12 years after John Kramer dies? I don't remember the timeline exactly. But Saw 7 is one of the more infuriating for me because it just seemed like a cheap cop-out because they were going to end the franchise at the time, and they said, well, let's do this thing that doesn't even make sense now that we've established a new Jigsaw. Like, God, I'm getting heated again. But Saw 7, as well, is just a horrible movie in its own right. And the twist, the forgotten twist of Saw 7 is the fact that the first two guys in the blade trap, in the pendulum trap, at the beginning of the movie, are the pig heads, are the other two pig heads. This was just randomly dropped by the director, by Kevin Gruder, in the director's commentary. It's just dropped there. And I don't blame Kevin Gruder, because Kevin clearly did not want to make another Saw movie. He was done after 6. 6 is a fantastic Saw movie. He didn't want to do 7. They kind of said, do 7. And then they brought him back for 10. Love 10. But 7 just has, oh, God. And again, like I said, people may say, but just pick Jigsaw or Spiral. Spiral's the most obvious twist. At least it made sense. Lawrence Gordon coming back as the apprentice no longer makes sense after you've essentially established, like, outside of like one little scene in 6 or 5, for all we know, he's dead. And the only implication that we get that he's alive is Jill dropping a videotape into his office in 6 or 5. I don't remember. But even then, we don't even find out it's him until 7. So, all right, I'm moving on. All right, calm down.
Just gotta woo-saw a little bit. Woo-saw. Just
Woosah.
But Vela, it is your turn. What is the worst horror movie twist in your opinion?
Yeah, well, once again, give a Slash some time to unwind after another triggering question for him. But I want to say firstly that I like that we all avoided M. Night Shyamalan answers. Because I'm pretty sure we did. That was my first note. Like, like low-hanging fruit felt a bit too easy, you know? So I wanted to avoid going with any M. Night movies. And the one I went with was a 2017 movie called Pyewacket. Not sure if any of you have seen it. It's not super popular as far as I know. And I mean, we're talking about twists in movies. It goes without say for all of our answers that we're in spoiler territory. So this one requires me to, like some of the other answers, spoil the ending of the movie as well as the twist itself. Long story short, the main character is a teenager who lives in like a secluded home with her mom, played by Laurie Holden, most known for being Andrea in The Walking Dead, of course. And basically, at the end of the movie, her mom is possessed by the demon Pyewacket. Our main character gets home one day, and Laurie Holden, is suddenly, because she's possessed, being like very threatening, very malevolent toward her. She escapes her mom, like she goes and hides in the attic. And the twist comes in where basically at the end of the movie, because she knows her mom is possessed by Pyewacket. She kills her mom, but like by the end of the movie, it was her mom again. And it's supposed to be a big, shocking thing. But when it goes to the scene after she escapes from Laurie Holden and she's hiding in the attic, and her mom opens up the door to get up into the attic and finds her up there, you know, she's being very caring. She's just acting like a mother. And so the behavior is so radically different from when she was possessed by Pyewacket that it's obvious within 2 seconds that it's actually her mom. Again, it's supposed to be some guessing game of like, oh, is it her mom? Is it not? But it's beyond obvious because the behavior is so fucking different. So it makes the ending, it really deflates what could have been a really good ending and a really great twist where, you know, when she gets ready to kill her mother, we all know at that point that it's her mom. So it's a really bad twist. It's very, very poorly written. And I don't think they had any idea like how transparent they were being and just how obvious they were being. So that's my answer. Definitely from Pyewacket.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, we are moving from worst horror twist to the worst horror movie director of all the time, in your opinion. Kellyanne, I want you to go first on this question. Which is a horror movie director that always has missed the mark, in your opinion?
There have been a few. I know one I want to mention, but I feel your rant will be better than mine will. One who does horror, they do mostly remakes now, but they did a few good horror movies in the 80s, was Jim Wynorski. Amazing writer, amazing director for his first few horror movies. He did the Chopping Mall series. And then he went into really low budget movies that were just terrible. I don't know how we get from Chopping Mall, which is a cult classic, to a movie called Dino Croc versus Super Gator, or Komodo versus Anaconda. I'm not sure what happened in the 90s to this guy, because in the 80s, he was a big deal when it, like, you would always see his stuff at like a Hollywood Video and Blockbuster, right at the front of the horror section. In the 90s, something must have happened because he took a decline. And his horror movies started becoming schlocky and just terrible. Like no thought process. It was just somebody handed him a script. Okay, we're making this. Really sad to see. That to me is my worst horror movie director of all time. Somebody who kind of fell off.
Well, I guess it's my turn. I have an obvious answer. I wanted to get a more elaborate one, but this one is just kind of like so he doesn't specifically make horror films, but when he makes movies, it's really bad. I'm sure people already know this from one of the previous questions when I mentioned one of his terrible films. For me, it's got to be Uwe Boll. I don't think this man has hit once in terms of a movie that I actually enjoyed. Like I fucking hated all of them. Blood Rain, I couldn't fucking stand it. I couldn't stand Alone in the Dark. I hated House of the Dead. Every movie that he has made that I've watched in the horror server or just in general has been god fucking awful, and he's pretty much like notable for movies like this. If I had an honorable mention, I would say, you know, it might be a hot take to some people, but he's very 50-50 for me. But when his horror movies are bad, they're really awful. And it has to be M. Night. Look, when he's bad, he's bad. B-A-D. I'm talking terrible twists, terrible characters, everything. But when he's really good, it's awesome. And I don't know why that paradigm is so inconsistent with him. It just sort of is disappointing overall, and maybe that mass disappointment is what sinks in the most when I have him on my honorable mentions. Like I love movies like Unbreakable, Glass, all that other stuff. Well, I didn't like Glass's ending, but I thought it still was a good movie until the end. But you know, Signs was like fine. It's just everything that he does is piss poor. You just want to like say, what are you doing? Stop. So I have to say M. Night, when he really misses the mark, it makes me want to like just cry because it's so bad. But I will go with Slash. What is a horror movie director that just is either disappointing or fails on the mark every singular time?
Well, I feel like I have to say this one because if I don't, some people might think I'm being a little bit too favorable to him. And I'm going to have to say David Gordon Green. Obviously, he's well known for the Halloween remakes, reboots, not remakes, the reboots of that franchise. But unfortunately, most of the time, those Halloween movies are missed for a lot of people. Halloween Kills was a disappointment to a lot of people, as much as I liked it myself. And Halloween Ends, as much as I liked it myself, people thought it was the most dreadful Halloween movie. But his worst movie by far in terms of horror is The Exorcist Believer. Lord Almighty, where to begin with that one? I mean, first off, how do you make The Exorcist boring? I don't know if anyone else found it boring, but I personally just almost fell asleep trying to watch that movie. And I'm not the only one to believe this, as apparently the studio took him entirely off the planned trilogy. The Exorcist Deceiver is indefinitely delayed currently, and I don't even think a director is attached to it yet. And again, as much as I like his 3 Halloween movies, it's just a matter of objectivity and what the public mostly feels about them. But that Exorcist movie is where I kind of drew the line with him. Because I was like, okay, I enjoyed your take on a slasher movie. But this is a more nuanced movie. The original Exorcist had some nuance to it, as much as the sequels don't really follow up on that, nor does the prequel. It's just, oh god. And it's the problem with making a legacy sequel to The Exorcist. I don't think that works. I don't think attaching Reagan and her family to another instance of this like demon, I don't think that's really the best idea. Oh god. And again, it hurts me. It hurts me to say that. But I feel like some directors are just not built for certain types of horror. I would want to mention a quick passing note to the one who shall not be named. Yeah. Oh god. Yeah, no. Almost threw up in my mouth. So, yeah. All right. That's it for me.
So I want to do a little clarification. As far as I'm aware, and I know we talked about this before, I think Gordon Green's like whole Exorcist trilogy after Believer was canned. I don't think Deceiver's coming. I think they got rid of that and they hit the emergency panic button just like Among Us, and they said, "Hey, let's get Mike Flanagan to reboot this again and let's have this movie come out March 2026 as far as I know." So that's kind of what they did with Exorcist. They were like, "Whoopsie, we fucked up." Let's
I
get
see
Mike
it now.
Flanagan and let's start over. Yeah.
Should have just
It's
got him to
been
begin with.
renamed.
Yeah.
It's been renamed on Google to Untitled Exorcist Film. Oh, what a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, it's a complete reboot. They're not going in that direction no more.
If they were gonna grab Flanagan, they should have just grabbed Flanagan before they started shooting the first terrible movie.
That's what
And
I'm
it would've
saying.
been good.
Yeah.
Oof, like I said, that is emergency break glass. Let's do something with this because I think Blumhouse spent a massive amount of money to get this franchise in the first place. So they're
400
like, we
million.
have to do something with this now and course correct.
$4 billion, 250 mil.
Fuck. Well, Vila, it is your turn. What is a horror movie director that just didn't hit the mark, and tell us your experience.
David Gordon Green was one who was high up on my list. I want to give a brief tangent and say that you guys are aware, I've talked about it before here in the server, that I'm fortunate enough to live in a city that has an Alamo Draft House, and so that's just where I always go to catch new horror, or just go to watch a movie in general. And I've been living in the city that has one for 3.5, 4 years now. And I have watched well over like 100 movies there, both new and older movies. To date, The Exorcist Believer is the first and only movie that has been not only just very bad, but just so dull and so lifeless that I grabbed an order card, like their whole system, ordering a drink or food, or whatever, with an order card, and they bring it to your seat. Awesome system, wonderful theater. But the first movie where I've grabbed an order card and just wrote like, "This movie sucks. Can I just get my check?" Like halfway through, and I just got up and left. Like even fucking Imaginary, I sat through to the very end. Which brings me to my actual answer. I wanted to go with somebody who's still working because I thought that was a bit more interesting to talk about. I also wanted to avoid some of the obvious, like Uwe Boll, M. Night, etc., or people who just do like super ultra low budget horror. I went with Jeff Wadlow, a Blumhouse mainstay, who just, the fact that Never Back Down is his best movie, I think kind of says everything you really need to know. His horror catalog is, of course, Imaginary, Truth or Dare, Fantasy Island, and Cry_Wolf. If anybody even remembers that movie, that's a fucking throwback and a half. Yeah, that's his catalog. Needless to say, none of those are good. And it's not even just the fact that the movies themselves are very bad, but even watching those, like especially Imaginary, there were just so many times where I'm like, the direction in this is just so poor. It's so lazy. Like there's like a scene where DeWanda Wise, the main character, or sorry, the lead actor in Imaginary, her character is trying to find something, and he just sticks the camera up in the corner of a room and then does like a time lapse of her like running around searching things in the room. I'm like, this is the laziest way you could have filmed this. Like, this is legitimately what I did when I was like 15 trying to film Halo machinimas on Xbox 360 back when that was a thing. Except this is like an actual professional Hollywood director. So that's my answer.
You know, when I saw Jeff Wadlow in the rumor mill for the new, what was it, Clayface movie for DC Studios, my heart almost sank to the ground. I was like, please God, don't be true, please. But it ended up not being true, so I was very happy about that. I was very, very excited. But
and like I've said for the other people, I just had one last note. Like I've said for the other people, I don't know, maybe a nice guy. I think I speak for all of us when I say that none of it's personally motivated. This is all just solely based on their filmography and their body of work. None of us want to like really shit on these guys as human beings or anything. But yeah, nothing that he's made to me is very impressive.
The only one I will shit on ever, because I believe that yes, comeback stories can happen for everyone, but the only one I want to shit on is the one that Slash mentioned, He Who Will Not Be Named. Yeah, I think that
Oh
guy
yeah,
personally deserves it.
yeah, that's different. Like we're not shitting on him for filmography. That's for an entirely different reason.
Yeah, but we're moving
Yeah,
on.
that's the exception.
Yeah, that's the exception to the rule. But everyone else, I'm sure they're awesome people. It's just the talent is just not there for some reason. But hopefully they get better, and that's what I think about this category. But we're moving on to the next one, which is there a horror film deemed as a bad movie, but you actually disagree with the notion from mainstream or maybe even audience score, where you feel like you actually like this movie, you think it's a great movie, cite your reasoning behind it, and I will go with Kellyanne first.
Uh, Actually, ironic because Vela mentioned Cry Wolf, and that's one of the movies. When I first saw it with some friends, we ended up creating our own version of that game in school. And I think it's a
Nice.
really good premise. Direction, I'll be honest, it could have used some work now that I'm a lot older and I understand more about how production works. I felt there were some missteps in production, sure, but I think it, even to this day, it's a solid movie. It tackles some social issues that back when it released in the 2000s were not really looked at in mainstream media as they are today because we didn't have as much rampant social media. I just think it's a really fun, goofy movie. And the setup and the twist at the end of just how they screwed somebody over for their own sick games was interesting because you didn't see that twist coming. For me, it is ironically Cry Wolf.
Okay, it's my turn. I have two of them. One of them is, it was heavily talked about in the server when it first came out. But I happen to like this movie. The first one is Malignant. Now look, I know for all intents and purposes, when you get to the second half of this fucking movie, it is absolutely stupid. It is probably the funniest, stupidest thing I think I've seen. I'm gonna try not to spoil what happens because I think it is an experience that you need to watch for yourself and see what happens, but it is quite possibly the most hilarious thing I think I've ever seen. But I liked it. I enjoyed the terribleness of what was going on, and even if it was like so obvious as to what was going on, I thought it was a well done movie for what it was. Which is, I feel this way about most James Wan films. He hasn't really missed for me so far. So I pretty much enjoyed this movie, but like I said, when you see the premise itself, I guarantee you, like 5 times out of like 5, you're gonna laugh. You're gonna laugh pretty hard. Next one is a given. This one is Jason X. People say this movie is, you know, a lot of people say this movie shit. They ran out of steam. They put Jason in space or whatnot. But I remember really enjoying it. I thought the characters were fun. I thought the kills were good. Namely, you know, everyone points to the cryogenic kill where Jason puts the chick's head in a fryer, a little liquid nitrogen like thing, and melts her head, and it's like an ice block, and he slams it. So I thought that was pretty cool. Like it is a decently made movie. Like if you want to just see some stupid kills in space, I think it's one of the better ones versus like Leprechaun in space, where that movie looked like I don't know what they were doing with the cinematography. I have no answer for it. That's how bad it is. But yeah, if you want to watch like a decent horror movie space thing, you're in the mood for a slasher and killing and stuff and whatnot, I think that's a really, it's so bad it's good movie. I had enjoyment with that one a lot. The next one is Slash. What do you think of this question? What do you think of a movie that was deemed as bad, but it's so bad it's good in your opinion, or you actually did enjoy it?
I've got two. I've got two. I know it's not considered really bad among the general fandom, but the first one is the first Silent Hill movie. Uh, as a youngin, as an old young chap myself, I really enjoyed that movie. I understand looking back on it that Pyramid Head's existence in that movie just is not supposed to be there. But as an adaptation of the series, I feel like it's possibly the best we'll ever get because let's be honest here, as good as the Silent Hill 2 remake is, do not have hope for Return to Silent Hill. For the love of God, don't. It's already not looking good. For personally, to me, is what I'm saying. The other one though is going to be Halloween Ends. I understand Halloween Ends with the whole shafting of Michael Myers to less than 10 minutes of screen time, around the same amount of screen time that he had in the original movie. In fact, uh, I understand like the criticism of that, and like certain shots of the movie, I'm just like, yeah, that shouldn't have been shot. The sewer shot, for example, the fight between Michael and Corey. But I really liked the idea of a copycat killer, and I feel like the fandom had really been looking for that kind of movie for so long. Ever since Jamie held up the scissors in 1988. And they shafted that copycat movie for Halloween 5 for the sake of, well, Michael. And for Halloween Ends, I feel as though the movie gets way too much hate for what it's trying to do because it's a very well made movie, in my opinion, in terms of kills and cinematography and messaging. I feel like it's one of the more brave Halloween movies, and it's one of the more character driven Halloween movies, which ironically should be the leading aspect of a Halloween movie. Michael shouldn't really be the driving force of a Halloween movie. It's why I prefer ends over kills. Ends just provides a lot more character work. Um, but I feel like again the general public was just looking for like a legendary outing for Michael Myers, and they got hit with a reality, kind of reality set in reality ending, and they just didn't find it as satisfying. It's kind of in the same way of Joker Folia Due. Some people got a set in reality ending, and it's just not satisfying to a lot of people. Now, I'm not saying I like Joker 2. I hate Joker 2, but Halloween Ends just provided me with a movie that I'd been looking for in the entire franchise. And I really got some entertainment value out of seeing someone else don the old Shatner. So
Vila, it is your turn. What is basically like just a movie that was so bad is good in your opinion, or actually had more good merits than terrible?
I'm going to go with a remake from 2023. It is the movie Malum, which is, of course, a remake of Last Shift, and made by the same director. This is a situation where I guess the director got paid a bunch of money to remake his movie. And I feel like this movie is hated mostly on kind of a moralistic ground, where a lot of people are just unhappy about a guy remaking his movie. And I guess I can understand that. But to me, seeing it from his perspective, it's very obvious that Last Shift was his passion project. It's what he's most known for. And I'm sure that movie was like his baby, right? And if you're working on a shoestring budget and you're not able to fully realize it the way that you want to, and you're offered a higher budget and you get that opportunity, I can totally respect and understand somebody taking that opportunity to realize it the way that you want to and that you weren't able to in the past. But I have seen both of them. I watched them both like almost back to back. I actually watched Malum first, not realizing that it was the remake to Last Shift. And then I watched Last Shift, and there are some parts that the original I think are better, like some of the more understated moments that have more punch and that work better. For example, in Malum, there's a scene where she's talking to a cop that walks in, not knowing that it's basically a ghost or like a hallucination. And he kind of bends down to pick something up off screen, and then he gets back up, and like his whole, it's great gore, but like his whole face is blown off and everything. And in Last Shift, in the original, same scene, same concept, but he gives like some closing remark of like, your dad will be really proud of you, and like he turns around and goes to walk out, and you see like a hole in the back of his head, an exit wound for where a shot killed him, and it's a much better punch with that effect in the first movie. But all in all, I do like the, if you want to call it more glossy, just better looking movie with more gore, better gore, and I don't know. I have a thing where, regardless of the quality of the horror movie, I really like and appreciate horror movies that are really entertaining, that kind of nosedive you somewhat early into insanity, into just crazy kind of stuff. And then they just keep it up at a pretty rapid fire pace. Like, they just really commit to being batshit crazy. And to me, Malum is one of those movies. Same with Last Shift, but Malum a little more so, again, with the added gore and everything. The same can be said with Grave Encounters. Those are really fun movies to me. Same thing. Wreck is a fantastic movie, terrifying, oppressive. But those are all movies that pretty early on, they nosedive you into the action, and then they just really keep it up. And so Malum is one that gets a really bad rap. It's got a very poor reception. I think it's more about a sort of ethical or moral sense for the negative feedback, not as much for the movie itself. And I actually enjoy it quite a bit.
Alrighty, next up is the next question. That is question number 7. People will sometimes associate B-movie cheese and campiness with bad. What is your take on that mindset? And Kellyanne, I will go you first.
So I love B movies. I mean, some of my favorite horror movies are B movies. I think people misconstrue B movies with low budget, and that's where they get like, oh, this movie won't be good. Uh, like, My Soul to Take. That was a very low budget B movie that took place in like 3 locations where they were taping. Amazing story. A lot of camp, a lot of like teenage angst. Still a fun movie. One of my favorites, whose books are written by my favorite author, The Final Girls. It's a campy B movie, but it has amazing acting, amazing cinematography. Like the special effects for the gore, you would actually think that these people just got stabbed or thrown out of a window. A B movie does not mean bad. It just means it's not, a AAA 5-star actor in it to me. But I do think they get a lot of grief because of social media mostly, where people will see like the indie showcases and just trash on them because they're not showing at a big theater immediately. I think more people should watch B movies. Give those young actors a chance to be seen, because you never know. They might be the next MCU stars, and then they can look back and say, oh yeah, I was in this crappy movie that I did because I needed to pay rent as an extra, but had fun. That's my thought on B. I love B movies, and more people should too. Show B movies love.
Okay, it's my turn on this question. I'll keep it simple. So I agree with that. I think people will see something low budget or cheap, or they'll be like, this is not what I'm used to, because it is a crowd that will, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, it's a couple of people out there that like a certain type of movie, or they prefer like the summer blockbuster 300 million budget thrown to a film and stuff like that. And I'm the type of film fan who loves both. I think you can relatively make something work on a lower budget, and you can make something also great on a high budget, and you can have vice versa, where you can have a terrible low budget film or a terrible summer blockbuster that has like $1 million spent behind it. So I think you can have a recipe for whatever in the film space, and this to me seems like a giant misconception. I don't think B movie cheese, low budget or low budget horror, or even cheesiness, I don't think that is bad. If something can make me laugh, hey, they have a genre, it's called horror comedy. I mean, if you don't like horror comedy, then there's serious horror films. If you don't like serious horror films, or if you don't like what is it, B movie, there's directors that are trying to make high bar horror films and stuff like that. And then there's the elevated horror and things of that nature. So I just believe that there's never one solid consistent genre, but there's people out there that will believe this, and they'll lump everything into one basket, and they know it's not for them, and they'll do it anyway. And I think that logic is like super strange to me. It's like, if you like something different, cool, but stick to what you know, right? It doesn't make this genre bad just because. So I really don't like that mentality whatsoever. I think it needs to die, and I think it's pretty stupid. But it's one of those things where it's like, it's different strokes for different folks. So I personally love it. I'm a big fan of low budget Evil Dead. That's how I got into horror in the first place. And it's like, as long as you deliver, make good on it, and just make it entertaining, then please, by all means, give me more, because I am not in that camp that will throw something to the wolves just because, hey, it's a different genre and I know I don't like it, but I'm gonna do so anyways. I don't like when people do that at all. I think it's not the same. I believe that, and this is 100%, like, cheesy does not equal bad. I think absolute cringe and sloppily made horror movies, I think that's bad. But cheesy, no, you can do something with it and make something creative. It just depends on what it is and how it's executed, in my opinion. Slash, it is your turn. What do you think of people who say B movies are terrible because low budget, is cringe, not well made, and stuff like that?
Oh, I think I agree with the sentiment that everyone is providing tonight, and that's just that, like, uh, to like drop that entirely, drop a horror movie entirely because it might be less budget. It might have a lesser budget than some of your favorite big blockbuster horror movies. I feel like does a disservice to the genre, because the genre itself is a film B genre of itself. Like, horror is one of the more uh, maligned genres in film, simply because it's mostly attached to like really bad movies at the same time. But I don't know. It's like, if it doesn't fit with the general public's view of what a movie should be like, I feel like Martin Scorsese killed film discussion as well, because just, if something's not cinema, then it's not worth watching. And unfortunately, I feel like that's kind of delved itself into affecting horror, because most people aren't going to see horror as true cinema, despite the fact that some of the oldest movies are horror. But don't let them tell you that. But it just feels like sometimes people just get way too up in arms about how movies should be made, and they worry more about how movies should be made and less about actually enjoying. Because a B movie can provide just as much entertainment, if not more, than your regular like big budget Hollywood movie. I mean, look at some of the most legendary horror movies ever. Halloween, Evil Dead. These were B movies back in their days. The genre has been built on B movies since the beginning of time, and if some people can't see that, they're just blind to it all. They just refuse to have anything different, and it's like, at that point, why would you even wait, like spend your time caring about this then? It's just a matter of like the public conscience not having uh just never having an opinion of their own and letting the masses decide it for them as well.
Vela, how about you? What do you think of this question where people are like, not a high budget film, not great, or B movies are like just not good in general because it's too cheesy or whatnot?
Well, it definitely relies a lot on individual taste. And I did really like what Calvin had to say about a lot of people sort of conflating and using B movie and low budget movie kind of interchangeably, and that distinction kind of being there. But I think there's some great examples. For example, Killer Clowns from Outer Space is very cheesy. It's a very campy, definitely a B movie. But looking at the qualities of it, just about everything is intended. You know, it's not one of those things where it's like a total train wreck. Everybody involved was completely incompetent. It's not The Godfather, but like it's not only fun, but like I don't think it's a bad movie. And I think it's a really good example of how you can have something be a clear example of something that's very clearly a B movie and very intentionally cheesy and campy and not automatically be bad. An actual better example is Evil Dead Rise from Lee Cronin very recently, where that movie has so much B movie influence. It really understands the source material. Yet the cinematography is fantastic. The acting, especially from Alyssa Sutherland, is incredible. Like it's actually just a good movie, and it really puts to bed this whole the whole kind of discussion and argument with kind of distinct. Sorry, I'm trying to think of phrasing here. Kind of separating quote elevated horror and then like your slasher movies, again, your B movies, things of that nature, where I feel like a lot of people lump horror into one of two sides of a spectrum, where like this is like a quote elevated art film, something like Hereditary, Midsummer, Suspiria, 2018, the list goes on, or you have like pure schlock, and that there's no in between. And I think Evil Dead Rise is a really great example of how you can have your basis in that more fun schlocky side, but again, actually still make a very competent, well-made movie. And it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive.
I agree with that. I think that's a good answer. I definitely agree with that. We're moving on to the next question, a fun one. Question number 8. The worst jump scare you've ever seen in a horror movie. It could be a good one or a bad one. I'll go with Kellen first.
So this is going to be a probably a little known movie. It was basically a remake of Cujo called Man's Best Friend, where dog had basically super rabies, and I always remember this jump scare because it was also one of the jump scares in the Resident Evil 1 game where the dog jumps out at you. We all remember that jump scare. But he did, this was actually before RE, but watching it, he's just walking around the porch, and then just launches himself through a fucking window to tackle a dude. When I was a kid, that scared the living hell out of me because it's like, oh, the cute dog is just walking around the porch. launches through window, rips a dude's throat out, goes on a rampage through the house. Like, as an adult, watching it again recently, a couple weeks ago, I'm like, that wasn't that scary now. But as a child Callan was very frightened of their dog's gonna jump through our windows. But I will say, it was well done, and that it was super unexpected. There was no lead up. There was no way you would know that dog was about to jump through that window and just go. Bad movie overall. I mean, I don't think many people saw it. I rented it from Blockbuster, but it was also in their discount section. But a good jump scare.
All right, it is my turn. So jump scares that I thought were, yeah. I'm gonna have to mention the toaster. The toaster is by far on Silent Hill Revelation just the one that is like, I mean, it's lazy. It's probably the laziest transition I think I ever seen with the Pop-Tart coming out and scaring the person, and it's just like, dude, like, the fuck. I that's what I said when I saw it. It was like no words. It's like me and my friends were sitting there in the call, and it just went from that to that shot in particular of the toaster, and we were all like, what the fuck. It feels like the movie just had a whole transition, and it didn't work out too well. It was pretty terrible. I also
have not been scared by their toaster before, though.
I mean, I have, but for the movie context and the way they framed it, I just don't think that it was that good. There was also another one, just any sort of like, what was it? Oh yeah, the Curse of Chucky jump scare with the dead grandma at the end is just kind of awful. Then the thing overhead, I don't know if that's a pillowcase or whatever, it just looked so goddamn it just looks so cheap. I was like, oh my god, they could have definitely did better than that. To me, I don't think jump scares work in Chucky movies in general unless they're really really good. Maybe some of the earlier ones, but some of the later ones where they started doing all these jokes and stuff like that, I just kind of got lost in the sauce. At least that movie tried to make it more serious, but still it had some kind of funny moments, and that was one of them. And I just think that any jump scare of all time that just is okay, we're gonna do this loud crescendo in your ear before the jump scare even happens, I think that just ruins all of them. Like every single one. I don't think I liked any of them that did pum 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 pum, and then all of a sudden the guy turns around and then it's like he gets scared. Oh, it's like, but you telegraphed the scare, so it's not scary anymore because of the music. Like I think Dead Meat talked about this when he made a podcast. He said like a good jump scare is literally when there's no music, there's nothing, and the guy turns around. I think he gave Halloween as a good example when someone sneaked up on Loomis. There was nothing, just a shoulder being touched by someone else in complete darkness, and you as an audience member, you're going, what the fuck is that, Michael? And it's not, it's someone else, and Loomis is about to have a heart attack, but you're about to have a heart attack because you heard nothing leading up to it. So yeah, I don't like any of those loud music jump scares at all. I think they ruin the experience, to be honest. Next up is Slash. What is the worst jump scare you ever seen in cinema history?
Any jump scare that's not in either of the first two Conjuring movies. I
I won't
don't
take the
even
slander
think.
for the Exorcist 3 jump scare.
Huh?
I will not accept the slander of the Exorcist 3 hospital jump scare.
I said Conjuring. Any of the Conjuring universe movies.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying that like every jump scare not in The Conjuring is bad.
Oh, okay, okay. No, I
Apologies.
meant to say every movie in the Conjuring universe that is not the first two Conjuring movies.
Sorry.
They are every one of those movies, except for those first two movies, have some of the cheapest, most lame ass jump scares I think I've ever seen in a movie. So much so that in The Curse of La Llorona, physics are being defied. Like,
Well,
this woman is disappearing into thin air,
Ren said it
despite the
best. They telegraph them.
they telegraph them so horribly. And like even in the third movie, which is far better than any of the spin-offs, there's still a few really bad jump scares that I just did not like. But there are some great horror moments. Like and it shocks me, why would the Conjuring universe rely on such great would rely on such horrible tropes as the the loud music jump scare with the loud stinger. It just makes absolutely no sense to me, because this is a franchise that has had that started off with two movies that really subtly built up their scares. Like the first two movies are really good in that aspect. They're very scary. They have a few jump scares, but those jump scares are usually well built up. And I just don't. Oh my god. The Nun is one of the biggest aggressors of this as well, because I feel The Nun made some of the biggest mistakes in that, like, you shouldn't be like relying purely on jump scares, because let's be honest, The Nun has nothing scary about it. It's just jump scare the movie. It's just horrific on that aspect.
The movie where I only know about it because a YouTube banner scared someone straight. That's the only fucking reason I know about that movie.
Oh my god. I feel
I will
horrible
say
for
The
you.
Nun 2 did the jump scare scene right. They built
Yes,
up to that shit.
The Nun 2 was a lot better in that aspect. I really did like Nun 2. Um I felt it truly showed what this universe can provide in terms of spin-offs. The more we can forget about the first Nun movie and the Curse of La Llorona and all of the Annabelle movies except for the second one, the better. But knowing that we've probably only got one last Conjuring movie before they end the series forever, I have no hope.
Well, Vila, how about you? What is the worst jump scare you've seen in a horror movie to date?
I could go with a lot of the ones from the movie Host, but I'm going to go with the very final jump scare, which is how the movie ends, because I really, really hate whenever a horror movie ends with a kind of screamer into the camera jump scare. That always makes me want to automatically lower the score to a 1 every time that happens. Though I hate having that rule because Sinister exists and that movie's awesome and also ends in a similar fashion. So I hate that movie for making me compromise on my morals. But yeah, Host, it's just they are walking through a dark hallway with a like Polaroid camera to light the hallway, and they're approaching a doorway, and it's just, they're getting closer, flashes, getting closer each time. And it's so obvious they're gonna do, on like the final flash, it's gonna be a jump scare. And I'm watching it, I'm just like, there's no way they're gonna actually do this, right? This has to be some kind of subversion in a way. Like they're gonna do something interesting with this, right? No, they don't. It's just ghost screamer jump scare into the camera on the final flash, cut to credits. Yeah, I have no idea why that movie was getting so much hype when it came out. I felt like I was getting punked when I sat down to actually watch it, but that's a easy answer for me. Pretty much all of Host, but especially that final one.
All right, it is time for the final two questions. What is a high tier actor that was wasted in a bad horror movie, or an actor that deserved better that you saw in these movies? Name one, and I will go with Kellyan first.
Jared Padalecki. He was in Supernatural. He was in a bunch of like high tier stuff. He's currently in Walker, Texas Ranger, but also in Gilmore Girls. But some of the horror movies he's done, like the remake of House of Wax, I have no issues with that. That cluster, that was a clusterfuck. But he's also been in House of Fears. He was in the new Friday the 13th, the 2009 one that didn't do great. Like, he's an amazing actor. Actually met him, nice guy. But just why the crappy movies? Like, okay, I like Cry Wolf. That's on me. But just why the crappy movies, dude? He got typecast as the pretty boy, and that was just what horror movies needed, I guess, in the early 2000s. You're pretty, so let's put you in this spot. Every horror movie he's been in, like in Friday the 13th, looking for his sister. We need a pretty person who could almost die. Here you go. We're gonna put you here. I think his talent was wasted, mostly because the 2009 Friday the 13th was garbage. It did not have a good script, but they really wasted the talent of an amazing actor who since then has done a lot of good stuff. That's my pick for the actor who got wasted in horror. He could have been in the new Freddy movie and that actually made it successful.
Um, I have to go with this pick because I was sort of surfing around and seeing which one I could find, but I thought these two were pretty well. The movies they were in, great talent. I hope I say this right because my Japanese naming convention is not good, but I think it's Hiroyuki Sanada. Oh, brother, you were wasted in Army of the Dead. You were wasted in that movie.
Real.
Yeah, that was he's an amazing talent, 100%. He made a show recently about samurais, and it was really good, but him being in a very terrible Zack Snyder Army of the Dead zombie movie was the biggest waste I think I ever seen imaginable. And there's still like some pretty bad ones, but it's just like he just came in. They tried to put Batista in there having some sob story, and then that's it. You don't see him that much anymore. So I really did not like how that movie handled like a lot of his side characters so far, and I thought that the beginning of the movie was the most boring thing I watched because it's just people talking and nothing actually happening until the last half of the movie. But Slash, it is your turn. Is there an actor that they wasted in a horror movie that was top tier or you really liked?
Okay. Um, some people might have forgotten he's in this movie, but I'm going to say one movie, and I'm going to let your minds conjure up who I'm talking about. The movie is Predators 2010.
Adrian Brody?
No.
Topher Grace.
No.
Interesting.
Lawrence Fishburne.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Larry Fishburne
Oh,
is
they
so
misused him.
wasted. one of the most legendary action. Morpheus versus Predators. How do you mess that up? How do you pass up Morpheus versus Predators for Adrian Brody? I love Adrian Brody, okay? I like him. But he's not who I want to see face Predators. I would have preferred Topher Grace as the main character, but no. Every one of the characters in that movie, but the main character, are the most interesting characters. Danny Trejo is in that movie for, what, 5 minutes? And he's still more memorable than our main hero. Because it's like the reveal of Lawrence Fishburne in that movie is really good, I will say. It's a really good reveal with him with like the Predator helmet. But other movies that I could think of. Oh, Jesus, is this the third time I'm about to mention Rob Zombie's Halloween? Brad Dourif and Malcolm McDowell in Rob Zombie's Halloween movies. Now, with Brad Dourif, I feel like cutting out his scene from the theatrical release of Halloween 2 of where he finds Annie's body. I feel like cutting his like voiced line was a disgrace to that movie, because that is one of the best scenes in an otherwise really bad movie, because it's just filled with so much raw emotion. But Malcolm McDowell as legendary from Clockwork Orange, legendary actor, and he was even wasted in Call of Duty Zombies as well, I will say. But it's like, with those Halloween movies, it's like, how are you getting these two top tier actors and you do nothing with them? They're main characters, and they're still horribly written. Why is Dr. Loomis the paragon of virtue from the original movie, who eventually drove himself insane? Why is he a conniving bastard who's more focused on selling a book rather than helping? Or Lori, it's like, it's just, it's a testament to how bad Rob Zombie is at writing characters most of the time when they aren't the Firefly family. If that's what they're even called, I don't even remember. It's been like 20 years since I've seen Devil's Rejects.
Yeah, the Firefly family.
Yeah, you got it right.
Okay. Yeah. He is so bad at writing characters that aren't the Firefly family. And I doubt he even wrote the Firefly family, because Sid Haig was just that fucking good. I wouldn't be surprised if it said, oh yeah, he wrote all his lines.
Just ad lib.
Just ad-libbed the whole fucking movie. I 100%, if you told me Sid Haig ad-libbed 1, fuck your mama, 2, fuck your sister, 3, fuck your grandma, I'd believe you.
He actually did ad-lib that because the script wasn't complete and they had a taping deadline.
I absolutely believe that. Because it is so balls to the walls insane. And even then, Sid Haig in 3 from Hell, unfortunately, I know what happened. Unfortunately, Sid Haig passed before filming ended on that movie. But why did he have to die? Because if I recall, he does die in that movie. Spaulding does die.
Yeah. Sid Haig, the actor, had cancer, and on the record, fuck cancer.
Fuck cancer. I will say that from recent experience. Fuck cancer. Fuck it. Fuck it all the way to hell. but it's just like Three from Hell was such a bad. I can't believe I didn't name that earlier. Like, but I'm sure we'll get into that on the post show. But no, there's too many actors because every actor has something good about them, and then you get a legendary actor who appears in a bad movie, and you're just thinking of the scene from The Walking Dead of just no, and it's like it's like, oh god, look how they massacred my boy.
Well, Vila, it is your turn. Is there a legendary actor or someone you really like acting wise that was completely wasted in a horror movie?
Yeah, Xander Berkeley in The Dark and the Wicked by Brian Bertino. That kind of comes to mind. He's just not given anything to do in it. He's only in it for a couple of scenes. But the scenes are probably the best part of the movie, which is very surprising. The Bye Bye Man. I mean, you have Doug Jones, legendary creature actor, Carrie Ann Moss. You got Lee Winnell, and you have Oscar winner Faye Dunaway in one of the worst horror movies of all time. Definitely from the decade, at the very least. But man, I got a throwback and a half. I'm gonna call out the 2012. I'm not sure if any of you even remember this one, but the 2012 movie Smiley.
Oh god.
Yeah, with Shane Dawson. He's obviously not the one I'm crediting. It's Keith David.
Oh,
Keith David was in this pile of slop.
Oh my god,
And,
I forgot he's in that movie.
Yeah,
well, I think everyone forgot that movie existed.
Guys, if they remember an old movie exists, we remember because we have member berries.
I remember.
Y'all remember? Yeah, I remember.
But well, I just say like I feel like Smiley is one of those abhorrent movies that was just so steeped in like early 2010s internet creepypasta culture that it kind of came and went, you know. I think a lot of people probably haven't heard of that one, but you're not missing anything, I promise. But that's definitely going to be my answer. Is Keith David in Smiley?
Oh my god, dude, they wasted Spawn. Unbelievable. Well, we are moving on to our final question of the night before we wrap up. And that is, why do you personally gravitate towards like bad horror movies in general? Do you think there's a lesson to be learned, or is it entertaining, or both? Cite your reasoning. And Killian, I want you to go first.
So for me, sorry, I work in, as mentioned, work in Hollywood. I am an editor. I watch them first for entertainment value because some of them are really fucking funny. We've all seen like the bad horror tropes take effect. And a second thing is to help me be a better editor. But also before then, I watch them because I enjoy all kinds of horror. I want to see what's out there. Like maybe like I watched a movie about weed turning people into zombies once. It was terribly written, terribly done, but was funny as hell because it was rated as a horror comedy. And I saw the IMDb rating at 1.2. Like, okay, I see it because it was a really bad movie, but it was funny. Their whole purpose as zombies was to get ice cream. If a movie can inspire people, it made me laugh and got me to realize, yeah, I should probably get back to editing videos for my YouTube channel. But you get movies that also might inspire you a different way in horror, especially bad ones. Like I did not think about the ecological damage that companies around me do until I watched a horror movie that took place in the state I live in. And then I realized, like, maybe I should actually take a interest in this. They're fun movies. Some of them are stupid fun. Like, I don't know if we've all seen Goosebumps. That changes all the time in the new Goosebumps show, but they're fun to watch. It's a way to turn off your brain for 90 minutes and just exist. That's why I love bad horror movies. I can, like, Fido is a comfort movie of mine. It's a terrible movie in all respects, but it's still a good movie. To me, at least.
All right, I'm gonna give my answer. I think it's just a general basis of loving film and trying to figure out, like, first and foremost, what entertainment am I getting out of this movie tonight, whether it's bad or good. As I said before in the beginning of the podcast, one thing I don't like about really bad horror movies is when they're bad and boring and they don't have any redeeming qualities whatsoever. But sometimes I like to participate and enjoy a it's so bad it's good horror movie, or a horror movie that was misjudged, or it has traits that weren't really bad in my opinion, and I like the movie more overall. So I think there's always a varying degree of what I want to see, and if it's like really bad or something, I might spark a discussion and be like, oh well, what happened here and what could have been improved in the writing in this spot or that spot. Because sometimes I watch a movie and it might be bad, but there's interesting concepts of the film, there's interesting premises behind the film, and I might say constructively, what could they have done to make it a little bit better, and maybe they'll make a sequel and it turns out to be a little bit better. So I'm always holding out hope for that. I believe that there is definitely big nuance even when talking about bad horror movies, because everyone inherently doesn't want to see a bad movie, but sometimes it will happen, and I think it's engaging to see some of the faults even in good movies. Like, there are good movies out there that I didn't like at all, and the general populace would probably disagree with me, but that's how it is sometimes, like trying to find what merits you really liked and what merits that really didn't land for people. And I believe that everything is all a matter of taste and subjectivity. So that's what I really like to see in film. And hopefully, like I said before, some people learn from certain mistakes and they do get better and they start making like movies that are really A tier, because like I said, anyone can have a redemption arc, and I do believe that is pertinent. It can happen. Next up is Slash. What do you think of just bad horror films and the perception of going out there and trying to understand what went wrong with it in the first place, and what gravitates you to watching it?
Well, I think bad horror movies are very important to us as a genre. Simply just because, like, bad movies themselves in general are just important uh, to genres, because it can show us, like, okay, well, what do audiences like gravitate towards, and what do they not gravitate towards? It's a good way of getting an audience demand uh, the best out of your audience. It's the best way, I feel. Some people may disagree with that. Some people may not. But um, what gravitates me to bad horror movies, I believe, is just life is way too short to be overly critical at times. I know that's kind of redundant, seeing what we've done tonight, but that's just a matter of fact right there. Um, we just take some of these, like, some entertainment for granted, because, like, no matter if it's a bad or a good horror movie, like, entertainment is entertainment. Someone's gonna find a bad horror movie to be their favorite horror movie. Someone's gonna find like a really good horror movie their least favorite horror movie. You know, it's like it's just it's just the nature of human opinion. It's our uh it's the curse of sentience in this day and age. So
Vila, how about you? What do you think of this question? Why do you gravitate towards bad horror movies, and do you have a message that you want to give in general?
Yeah, I think they are important for a frame of reference, if nothing else. But for me, they're usually just a form of entertainment. Like I said before, particularly with zombie movies. Sometimes I'm just really in the mood for some some stinking hot trash, and I tend to always get what I want in that way because there's no shortage of those types of movies. But yeah, for me, it's not incredibly deep when it comes to horror movies that most everyone would tend to agree are pretty bad. They are usually ones that I just tend to avoid because, like I mentioned earlier, usually if I'm sitting down to invest the time in a movie, I do like analyzing film. I do tend to kind of gravitate more to my kind of artsy horror because of that. I really do like seeing good filmmaking. I love seeing fresh ideas and great execution with those ideas. And obviously, bad horror films are, generally speaking, not going to have that. And so for me, they tend to just exist as pure entertainment value.
All right, and I think this was a fantastic podcast all around. So I would like to thank my guests once again for coming by. We're gonna do our outros. I'm gonna start first. So you can find me on social media at Renegade Operative, mostly everywhere: Twitch, YouTube. I'm not really too hard to find in terms of just posting on social media in general. Like I said, I do not post on Twitter anymore. I'm inactive on that shit. I know a mutual asked me, "Hey, are you coming back?" The answer is no. I'm sorry, man, but it's just it is what it is. I will be on Blue Sky. So my Blue Sky is rentoperative.bsky.social, and that's where you can find me and all my rambling and shenanigans. And when I talk about this podcast and when I'll upload it, I'm currently working on a review for Cobra Kai season 6, and I recently finished it. So whenever this podcast is over, I'm going to work on that first, then work on this podcast, and you'll see two cool videos. I liked how it turned out. So if you've seen the season, look forward to it. It was pretty fun. Next up is Vila. Where can we find you on social media?
Actually, kind of nowhere. I also have been inactive on Twitter for several years now. The only social media, I guess, outside of this that I have an account for right now is Instagram, which I keep private. Sorry. So just here on Discord, if you ever want to find me, Vela dot is my username on here.
Yep, I will post a link to the horror Discord below in the description. So if anyone wants to come in and talk horror movies, this is the guy right here, the main man. Next up is Slash. Where can we find you on social media, buddy?
well, you can find me on Blue Sky at the slasher of 78.bsky.social. Um, I'm not active on it really much anymore, just because college has been taking up a lot of my time, and frankly, I've noticed that I've become very much jaded towards social media in general. A lot of rage bait actually gets to me, and like I'm just trying to work on that. Um, I'm actually on Twitch at the slasher of 78, and I will actually be live tonight, just a few hours after this podcast gets done, streaming with my friend Jackson, uh, or Jax as he's better known on my Twitch, with Dead by Daylight. We'll be doing that tonight, so anyone who wants to join in during streams is very much welcome to. I'm also on YouTube at slash. The username is the slasher of 78 as usual. Not much really going on there. I may start posting, but college is just taking up a lot of that time. I've been thinking of actually doing a read of my first ever essay I published for college. So try and look out for that.
And Kellyanne, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me. I've not been on Twitter in a while, but I do have Blue Sky. It's callanhale.bsky.social and also Callan Hale at YouTube, where I will be picking up my horror series again. Just had to take a break for work and life stuff happening. But I'm always happy to talk horror with folks. Or anything with folks. If you have a love for horror games, my channel mostly is revolving around horror games.
And we are the Infinite Ammo Syndicate. We are signing out. I'm going to try to get this on Spotify, all this other stuff tomorrow, as well as YouTube. So there will be more horror discussions. As soon as I formulate ideas, we will definitely do them. But for now, we are signing out. Hopefully you guys have a good night. Take care of yourselves, and later.